Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion of the Spider-Verse tie-ins to Secret Wars as we take a look at Spider-Verse Volume 2, Number 4. Now, last time on Spider-Verse. With the Spider team now finally fully assembled, with the last member being Spider-Man Noir, they wound up getting ambushed by this domain's version of the Sinister Six. And while the Spideys put up a valiant fight, sadly they were outclassed and the Sinister Six beat them. As a result, they wound up getting taken back to Norman Osborn, who, while apologizing for roughing them a bit, did reveal why he was having this, why he wanted to find them. It turns out that the reason why the Spideys have been having flashes of their lives prior to Battleworld and have been drawn to each other is because they're still connected to the web of life and destiny, and part of the reason Norman's been looking for them is because he's been studying it, and he believes that if he can find the secrets of it, he might be able to give the Spideys a means of getting home, as well as potentially just figuring out just how it ticks and so forth. While the majority of the Spideys want to kind of go along with this and decide to stay with Norman, Spider-Gwen, well, she thinks this whole thing is nuts, and while she calls the team out on it, she decides to go screw this place and leaves, with Norman allowing it because he says they're not really prisoners here. As such, to try and get her mind off things, Gwen does try going around and does more superhero stuff, but ultimately the guilt kind of drives her to go back to her secret place, i.e., her gravestone. But upon arriving, she finds that she's not alone as a man approaches her, and the ending of last issue revealed that this man was this domain's version of Peter Parker, which is where this issue picks up. Now, before I get to the plot summary, though, I'm going to just reveal something. The story kind of cuts between two intersecting plots. One of them is the stuff with Gwen and Peter, and the other is the stuff with the Spideys and Norman Osborn. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to do one plot at a time, so I'm going to be doing the Gwen stuff first, and then the stuff back at Oscorp. But they do end up tying together in the end, and for the most part, it's just going to I'm still going to be revealing the major plot points in the order that they actually happen. So there you go. But either way, yeah, this issue actually begins with Gwen wondering what the hell, because, well, if Peter is telling the truth and he's Spider-Man, well, then he should be dead. Peter, of course, counters with the fact that, well, she should too, since that's her grave right there, and yet here she stands talking to him. So Gwen, of course, Gwen kind of concedes the point and wants to know what the heck's going on. However, before she really can get an answer, the pair are interrupted by someone. Venom. Yeah, it turns out Venom's kind of been stalking Gwen. And the reason why he was stalking her is because Norman wanted him to keep an eye on Gwen. So, yeah. Norman's knucking futs. However, Venom has finally revealed his hand because, well, it's Peter Parker. And after you know anything about Venom, then you know that this particular Spidey villain is obsessed with Peter Parker. And with Venom seeing that Peter Parker is alive, he thinks that this is a golden opportunity to take him, so to speak, which either means killing him or potentially kidnapping him in a stalkerish girlfriend fashion. It could be either or. It's Venom. It could be one of those two or whatever. But either way, yeah, Venom immediately tries taking a dive at Spidey, and while Gwen is able to throw Venom off Gwen is able to thankfully throw Venom off by crushing him under a tree, and using that momentary distraction, she's able to grab Peter and swing away. With them getting a moment's breath on top of a hold on. Telephone pole. Sorry, I was blanking on the name. But while Gwen immediately starts trying to talk strategy with Peter, well, he actually starts losing his balance and almost falls off the pole. Now, of course, for a normal person, this is a completely regular reaction, but not for a spider person. So Gwen, of course, asks what the hell, and Peter reveals, yeah, there's a reason why he has been out of action. He's actually lost his spider powers, presumably in this universe's version of the Clone Saga. And basically, as such, using this moment, Peter does reveal more about why he's just kind of been off the radar for so long. Pretty much, after he lost his powers, he decided to go underground, so to speak, and, well, he just was living his life. As he even admits, he has a wife and children now, so he's just kind of been doing his own thing for the last few years and was kind of content to do so, but recently things changed. Specifically, Secret Wars happened, and these handful of Spideys from across the multiverse wound up coalescing in his version of New York, and when they did, Peter's noir counterpart wound up seeking him out, and they've kind of been in contact ever since, which is part of the reason why Peter is talking with Gwen at all. As we learn later in the issue, well, part of the noir actually contacted Peter and told him, "Hey, Gwen's away from Oscorp. Can you tell her that Norman's nuts?" So yeah, pretty much Peter is essentially just acting as the technical support to Noir. Unfortunately, Peter doesn't really have a lot more, that's all Peter managed to get out, as Venom managed to recover from getting hit in the face with the tree trunk, as he immediately sets on Gwen and Peter, and just grabs Peter in what is essentially a very aggressive bear hug, so to speak. As such, Gwen realizes that she kind of needs to get Peter out of Venom's grasp, and so she ends up chasing after them, and thankfully she does manage to knock Venom out by hitting him with hold on, parking meter. I keep forgetting words, I'm sorry. She managed to knock Venom out with a parking meter and get Peter away, but it's becoming clear that they need to take him down. Thankfully, Gwen is noting similarities with Venom, as she is noting similarities between Venom and Carnage, and so she believes that if Venom is anything like Carnage, then she might know a way to beat him. As such, she ends up taking Peter to an abandoned guitar store, and while Gwen does have enough time to start setting up an amps and plugs in a guitar, Peter does warn her that Venom knows where they are, and he's right outside the door. Well, Gwen tells him that she needs a minute. She doesn't get a minute, as Venom ends up bursting through the front door, and so Gwen says, "Okay, fine. I'm ready." As he plugs in an electric guitar, sets the amps to max, and strums it hard. Which, yeah, the force of the noise manages to force the Venom symbiote off of its host, in this case Eddie Brock, and so Peter takes this opportunity to get in close and knock Eddie out with a punch, which does work, but Peter also thinks he kind of broke his hand there. As such, Gwen and Peter are able to figure out quickly that if Venom was working for Norman, then the fact that he's not going to be reporting back from tailing Gwen will alert Norman right away that Gwen is on to him, and Peter does warn her that Norman's still crazy. After all, if you know anything about Spider-Man lore, Norman is the one that killed this universe's Gwen Stacy, and so Peter knows that if Norman thinks that anything is wrong at all, then he'll go right back into full psychopath mode and will probably kill not only Gwen, but all the other spider people as well. So they kind of need to find a way to get rid of him. As such, Gwen thinks that she might have an idea to get rid of Norman, which is also where we kind of can cut back to the stuff with Oscorp. As back with the Spideys and Osborn, well, Anya's feeling a little left out. Basically, while the other Spideys are kind of just helping out around the lab, helping Norman and his scientists try and figure out what's going on with the Web of Life and Destiny and their various connections to it, well, Anya doesn't really have anything to do. She's not really a scientist. She's just for the most part, aside from her spider powers, she's just like any other person, and really all this stuff is just kind of going over her head. Thankfully, though, she does get a friend in the form of Spider-Ham, who can actually relate to her situation, as he kind of feels similarly about this whole thing, and even tells her there's a buffet upstairs, and just kind of offers her a chance to go up and talk with him to try and get her mind off things and maybe just relax. And Anya at first is a little confused by it, but she does decide to take Ham up on the offer, and the next panel is them just in the cafeteria as Spider-Ham is just stuffing his face full of food and talking about the various specials they have, while Anya is just kind of picking at her meal. However, Ham just keeps talking about how this place is amazing. It's the life here. He can pretty much just do whatever he wants, and they don't care if he just loafs around and eats all day, which is what he does most of the time, especially when Norman is sitting in his Caesar's Palace chair. That last statement causes Anya to do a double take. As such, she asks Ham what the hell a Caesar's Palace chair is, and Ham explains that apparently there are some times when Norman sits in this weird chair and puts a crown on his head and starts ranting and raving about how he's going to storm the gates of heaven and all that crap. And while Ham really didn't pay it any mind, well, Anya starts wondering what the hell's going on, so she immediately wants Ham to tell her what he's talking about. In the meantime, back with the Spideys and Norman, as they're continuing their work, Pavitr ends up getting an alert on his phone, and when he opens it up, he finds a picture on there. And And he says that he thinks it's for Norman, though he thinks he should look at it quickly as it apparently expires in 20 seconds. And so when Norman looks on the phone, he sees a picture of Peter standing on what looks like the Golden Gate Bridge with a crudely made sign to pretty much calling him out and telling him to come meet him. And of course, the instant Norman sees this, just pretty much, he just drops the nice guy routine as he ends up smashing the phone in place and starts ranting and raving about how like he's clearly not one of them, the web would have picked him up, but he wonders how the hell he could have missed him for so long. Of course, the other Spideys want to know what's going on with him, but at this point, Norman is just lashing out at them, and even when they try offering help with this, he just tells them to shut up and do their jobs, and when he comes back, he expects results before he ends up storming off. And of course, the other Spideys are looking at this and wondering, what the hell? As such, however, before they can start figuring this out, Anya pops in and says she has something to show them. And in the meantime, though, back with Norman, he ends up going to meet with the Sinister Six and tells them to suit up because they've got places to be. Though he does leave Electro behind because he wants him to keep an eye on the Spideys. And when Kraven asks Norman if they're going to take what vehicle he's going to take, Norman responds with, he's going to take his glider. But thankfully that's not where this issue ends, as Anya takes them directly to the Caesar's palace throne, and sure enough, yeah, it's some weird freaky deaky shit. It doesn't look like a modern throne, it actually looks ancient. And when Billy takes a closer look at it, he sees that there are ancient markings on the chair, and the markings directly translate to siege paralysis, which is supposed to be an ancient artifact that only the one who found the Holy Grail may sit in. Put simply, this is an artifact that is capable of warping reality, and Norman likes to sit directly in it and rant and rave about how he plans to take on the god of this world. So yeah, Norman's not all there. And to make matters worse, when the Spideys take a closer inspection of it, they notice that the crown, so to speak, is actually connected directly to the room that the Spideys have been studying the Great Web in, which means that whatever Norman's planning to do, it's tied directly into the web, which is probably part of the reason why he's been getting the Spideys there, because it's clear that whatever he plans to do with this thing, It involves taking on Doctor Doom, which again, as I've continually stated, a few sentences ago, is a fucking god in this reality, and he wants to use the Great Web to do it. So not exactly a good thing. Which even the Spideys call Ham out on why he didn't tell him about that. But Ham's defense is that he hasn't really interacted with humans that much. They do weird things all the time. How is this any different? However, as the Spideys get closer and closer to the siege paralysis, that's when it starts sparking up. And sure enough, yeah, because of the Spideys' connection to the Great Web, the closer they get to this thing, the more it starts going crazy. The point where they can actually start feeling it. As such, the Spideys decide they need to back off, and someone else agrees. And this is where I should probably point out a little thing with Battle World. As I mentioned when I talked about the first issue, when I started talking about this miniseries, one of the tie-ins for Secret Wars was a miniseries called Thors, which focused on the various Thors of Battle World, and how they typically operated is that the various Thors of the multiverse essentially acted as Battle World's police force, guarding each domain, protecting against borders, going up against any threats or enforcing borders, going up against any threats that may threaten the sanctity of Battle World. Because while each domain is a reach unto itself and operates on its own rules, there are some things that can have a greater effect on Battle World or even Doctor Doom himself. So as a result, the Thors kind of have to maintain relations between them and pretty much take care of anyone that does anything that may end up threatening either Battleworld or Doom himself. So, when you got a crazy billionaire who's directly tapping into a chair that's supposed to be able to warp reality on his whim, and he seems to be gathering a bunch of people who are causing the chair to freak out just by getting near it, clearly that's gonna get the attention of someone, because in all the flashes of thunder, there appears a new figure. A Thor, a female Thor, so to speak, who pretty much tells the Spideys to get away from the chair. And that's where the issue ends. So, okay, thoughts on this issue? Well, for starters, I love the action. I like that, of course, I do kind of like the revelation with Peter Parker, for starters, which does tie into the action, trust me. But what I like in that is that, well, we get more story on this domain. While it is, well, of course, the big draw of this miniseries is that it's still the various Spideys in the multiverse meeting up. This domain clearly has its own history, and while the Spideys call this domain home, they're clearly not from whatever universe this domain is from, because none of them have histories that match up with what happened here. The only bit of history that we know of that's true is that this world is that up to a point, this world was a lot like the main Marvel universe, but then for whatever reason, this world's Spider-Man vanished, and as a result of that, it does kind of make you wonder what the heck happened to him. Was he just erased because all these other spider people are coming here? Or was he killed? We don't know. So when we finally do get to meet Peter Parker, are we immediately asked questions about why he's not around anymore? Why isn't he Spider-Man? Why isn't he kicking ass? And sure enough, the reason is he can't. He can't. He doesn't have his spider powers anymore. They're gone. And when it comes down to it, even if he wanted to become Spider-Man again, if he had the capabilities, well, the mayor of New York is Norman Osborn, who is the psychotic who killed Gwen Stacy, who is so hell bent on being the top dog. He actually he is an artifact which he thinks will be able to give him the power to take on their literal fucking god. So, it might be best to be cautious, is what I'm saying. And it's part of the reason why Norman reacts the way he does, because, yeah, Peter calling him out, it's a trap. Gwen and Peter set it up to get Norman away from Oscorp so that Gwen can go in and talk to the Spideys. And basically, the only reason that the plan worked is because Peter and Gwen banked on that Norman would be so insane that he would not realize the obvious trap and just go in anyway because he hates Peter that much. So I can understand why. I can understand why Peter wouldn't do that, but again, necessities and all that. At this point, he does need to get involved, even if he can't actively do anything as Spider-Man. So, I kind of like that. I do like learning more. When it comes down to alternate universes, I do like learning more, and I won't deny it is kind of fun. It was kind of amusing to see Peter holding up that little cardboard sign and that still image calling Norman out, and then seeing Norman's nature. Just seeing Norman's, well, amicable facade just drop immediately. I like that. Which, yeah, that's it. Going back to that, and that's the whole reason I said I like the fight scenes. I like the fight between Gwen and Venom, because for one thing, we do get kind of some nice stuff with Peter kind of making some comments here and there, but because he's lacking his spider powers, he is kind of a hindrance, and sadly, he is the target of Venom's ire, which kind of gives me an amusing thought of Venom just giving him the symbiote for shits and giggles, and he just runs around as Spider-Man for a while with it. But that's just fantasies and all that. So, it is still cool to see that, and I do like that Gwen is able to take him down because she knows the similarities between Venom and Carnage. So, that's cool, I like that. But it also does kind of lead to some nice stuff as we see Gwen try to wrap her head around seeing Peter at all and wondering what the heck he's doing here. Though it is also mostly business. Mostly business as Peter talks about how he says Norman is just crazy. So I do kind of like that. It's some minor interactions, but it's cool. And I do like how they take Venom down. I also do like the progression I also do like kind of seeing the Spideys kind of interacting more. I like that we see the two less scientifically inclined spider people actually going off and doing their own thing. I like that we see, in this case, Anya and Spider-Ham. I like that they just kind of step aside and just talk. And I do like that Ham recognizes that Anya feels out of place as it is and just kind of offers her a helping hand and say, hey, you just want to go to the buffet and talk? I like that. It's just kind of some nice little interaction. And the stuff they do talk about, but before Ham talks about the Caesar's Palace thing, it's clear that they were just chatting, shooting the shit. I like that. It's just kind of, I like seeing little moments of calm like that, where they just when they just can take a moment to just relax and socialize, especially when you have like a team like that. After all, because yeah, they're very different spider people, but they're also still spider people. So it's kind of cool seeing Anya and Ham talk about all these just talk. As like I said, they're the less scientifically inclined Spideys in the group, so they can just go away and chat while the other Spideys just doing their own thing. I like that. It's cool. It's cool. But of course, yes, I also do like the twist with Norman, because like I said when I did read this comic before, it just felt like something was up with Norman from the start. After all, we saw the Sinister Smile in Ham's story. We saw he employs supervillains on the regular. He set up a sting operation to get Spider UK and Anya, and he continuously covered up the Spidey's activities in the media. And I know he said, well, I didn't know if you guys are evil or not. Well, here's the thing. You know they're fighting supervillains. You set shit up to find, knowing that they would go after it because they believe that supervillains would be involved. Of course, they're gonna be heroes. So, of course, so honestly, with that in hindsight, you know that Norman is full of it. Especially, again, because he employs the Sinister Six, who are still freaking supervillains. There is no way that you can get around that fact, especially when the Six were gloating about how they would happily take down this team of Spideys because guess what? They're spider people and they hate Spider-Man, so this might be a little cathartic for them. So, yeah, so I kind of like that the tension is deflated over there, and we start to learn exactly what Norman is up to. Put simply, he's tapping into the web of life and destiny to try and power the Siege Paralysis so he can gain enough power to overthrow Dr. Doom. So, yeah, I kind of like that. I do like the progression. I do like the Spidey's actually kind of putting two and two together and realizing, okay, yeah, this guy may be a little off his rocker. But I do have one complaint with this plot point. Well, on the one hand, I do like that it does showcase why Norman is so interested in the Spideys, and why he actively hunted them down and wanted them to help him work on the Web of Life and Destiny. But on the other hand, when the plot point is revealed, sadly it takes center stage now. Basically, from this point on in the story, any mention of the Spideys and their lingering memories feeling out of place or being drawn to each other has no bearing on the story. It's just gone. Basically, from this comic's perspective, it gave you the explanation for why they were feeling like that. They're connected to this web. It's in tatters because the multiverse is destroyed, but they don't understand. But the Spideys are never really given a clear answer on that. They're basically never shown because, in a way, I kind of understand that. After all, if they were to try and if they were trying to tap into the web and started figuring out ways to repair it, then Secret Wars would be over. And the whole point of that stuff was resolved in the main storyline, so of course it wouldn't be resolved in the tie-in. But then, why bring it up in the tie-in? I understand you need a reason to bring all these Spideys together, and the Web of Life and Destiny was an integral part in the original Spider-Verse storyline. So of course, I do like that they at least mention it in this book. It's just in the first 3 issues they were laying down all this stuff about how they were drawn together, how they were all seen to be strands in a web, and how they all had lingering memories of lives they don't remember leading. And ultimately, yeah, they figure out that they were connected to the Web of Life and Destiny, but that doesn't answer all their questions. All they really know is that they had other lives and that they're somehow connected to this web. But they never figure out that the web is the source of why everything has gone awry. After all, the multiverse, they never figure out, hey, Battleworld's wrong. This place should not exist at all. Instead, it's more like they kind of lean into the falsity of everything, especially when they learn that Norman Osborn is knucking Futz. Now, to be fair, that makes sense for this in regards to in-universe, because like I said, when it comes down to the different regions of Battleworld, they all mostly have their histories unaltered from when they were just individual universes. So, of course, basically, from the perspective of this world's Norman Osborn, he killed Spider-Man, and now suddenly 6 more Spideys start jumping around his New York, and there's this ultimate power, and he starts learning that there's a power source that they're all linked to. Well, I can understand why he would suddenly want to take advantage of that. And yeah, that's a big problem, because this is Norman fucking Osborn. He's a psychotic, the Green Goblin in most universes that we see him in. So, him having access to that level of power is just as much of a good idea as letting Dr. Doom have all that power. So, this is probably something that they will want to take care of. It's just that once that plot line enters the fray, the whole connection to the Web of Life and Destiny thing, the whole multiverse being destroyed and that they may not belong in this domain, it's all gone. It's just forgotten. It's just kind of pushed to the wayside. And ultimately, the plot from this point forward is about trying to stop Norman Osborn, which is not a bad plot, as it doesn't feel like a typical Spider-Man plot. It's just that when you hype up the bigger, more mystical side of things with having the Spideys and their connection, I just wish that had more of a proper resolution beyond, oh, you're all connected to this web that's in tatters, maybe we should look into it. So I'm gonna give the story flack for that. It feels weird that they build that part of the story up and then just drop it once the development with Norman comes up. So yeah, I'm gonna consider that a flaw. But otherwise, though, issue still is fine. Like I said, good action with Spider-Gwen and Venom. I like seeing I like seeing Norman have his breakdown and go into full psycho mode. I like seeing the plot development. I love seeing the Spideys interacting and kind of growing closer. I like seeing them figuring out what Norman's up to when they figure out the siege paralysis. And the final shot with the Thor showing up and telling the Spideys to get away from the chair. I think it's pretty cool and does make you realize that shit's about to go down. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I hope you tune in Thursday as we take a look at the final issue in this mini-series. And as always, I hope you have a good evening. Take care.